EnderSword here again with another fairly low-level game. We've got two bronze players, Rise and Demon, as our Terran over here. We'll be focusing mostly on Rise, the Zerg player, for this game. Again, I'm doing a series of videos just to focus on bronze, silver, and gold league play, to point out some of the macro issues, mechanics issues, and just general strategy issues that people can be addressing to really improve their play quickly, to get the most out of small improvements that can be done by everyone, but that some people just aren't thinking to do or don't realize that they're doing wrong. So looking at initially what Rise is doing, other than somewhat BMing his opponent immediately, the Overlords was just kind of moved out of the way. You want to be sending Overlords into position quickly, so that you can scout either initially or scout later. It's very important to know what your opponent is doing. A lot of people in the very low leagues think of scouting as finding out which base he's in. That's not it. You have to find out what they're actually doing, and getting these Overlords in place as Zerg can help you really get vision on the map, see what they're initially planning, move them in place to be turned into Overseers, to drop changelings and stuff later, drop creep places. It's very important to be in the mindset of using these Overlords as an actual strategic asset and not just something that controls your supply and so forth. So this one up here could easily be covering your natural if you're looking to expand, to keep an eye out for bunkers or anything. This one should really be going towards a base for later, and not sent out quite late. So we see here, if we focus on the hatchery back at home, the larva production, of course, is constant, but the drones coming out are a little inconsistent at the moment. A lot of larvae are popping and just kind of sitting there. It's not a matter of money. As you can see, there's plenty of money to turn these two things into drones, into Overlords, but a lot of larvae are just initially coming out and waiting. There's no reason to have these wait at the moment. There's no particular build that he's trying to do where he would require that. He sent a drone down here to fast expand, but he doesn't seem to have any intention of actually doing that. We see a scout go up here, just at a small point. That looked like it was actually attack moved in. When you're going to a Terran and you have some sense they may be walling off, it makes sense to set a waypoint somewhat up to see and instantly send it back down. You don't want to be just suiciding yourself against a Marine. You can gain some benefit by peeking up into that base a few times. So when you send it up that ramp, you want it to come immediately back down, chill out a little bit, and then you can take another peek later and see if they added something to this barracks, see if they got rid of this bunker, see if they changed something, see if there's marauders or Marines out. Some sort of information. So you don't want to just suicide that in if you can avoid it at all. So I think that was a case of just not paying attention and attack moving it up. Now over here we see the Queen has just popped out and the immediate lair tech goes up. This is pretty quick to get that at the 5-minute mark, along with an expansion. There's not a lot of defense out on the field, actually none. No Zerglings have been produced at this point, though the tech is down. That's a bit unusual to go for that. Unless there's an actual reason to go for speedy tech like this, you should try and avoid it. Unless you actually have a plan that relies on that quick tech, you don't want to be doing this. And as we can see, Rise lets that layer finish, has made a roach warren, and then isn't really doing anything that requires the layer. So you tend to want to avoid that. If you're going to rush to tech, there has to be a reason that you rush to tech, because you used all your resources on it. And then you end up in a situation like this, with 6 larvae chilling at your main, 3 larvae chilling at your natural, and you don't have enough resources now to use them all because you fast tech to a layer or something. So you've got to watch out for that and make sure that your teching is kind of coherent that there is a reason that you did it, and it's not just that you rushed to do it because you might want it. Also important, since we're in this position with a lot of larvae but no money to spend yet, supply blocking again. Every race is running into trouble with this, and Zerg is one of the most habitual offenders for this. They wait until the last minute to make their Overlords, and then they make multiple ones all at once. You want to get out of that habit. It's almost even more detrimental because the larvae cannot be, they hit a cap and they won't produce anymore by themselves. They'll only produce from the injection. So if you're sitting there with 3 or more larvae, the hatchery isn't spawning anymore for you. So you're actually just permanently losing that production by supply blocking yourself. So you want to avoid that situation. Now, an Evo chamber went down, and spore crawlers are going down all over the place, in addition to one fairly oddly placed spine crawler. That's pretty interesting. As you can see, if we look through Rise's vision, there's no justification for this at all. He's just kind of scared that there may be banshees or drops or something coming out. And this Overlord is strategically positioned nowhere. It would make sense to take a poke in with one of these Overlords, perhaps turn it into Overseer, and try and see what's actually going on in that base, as opposed to blind teching to something that you're scared of. This is the consumption of 4 drones and a lot of resources just to hold off something that you don't have any particular reason to believe is coming. So you want to avoid doing that. I know people get into their mind, oh, I lose to banshees a lot, so they want to avoid it. But if you lose to banshees a lot, check if they're making banshees. Don't just defend against them randomly. You want to try and actually find out and get some information, because as we can see, that is not what is occurring at all, and what is in fact occurring is a little more scary than that. So finally, Rise has decided to produce a bit of an army, and then basically 7 roaches here. He went for that tech on speed pretty early. If you're going to get that speed, it's a good time to bring up that you actually might want to get some creep spread so that you get a lot more use out of it. There's been 2 tumors going down, and we're going to see in the next 7 minutes of the game, those are the only 2 tumors that actually end up anywhere. Now, Rise pokes up that ramp, sees that army there, and then decides to attack with the roaches anyway, ending up with, well, he didn't actually lose any, but he ended up with them fairly badly beaten, and I don't know what he was looking to accomplish there. In the meantime, back at home, the second half of that force hits the front and pretty much cleans out these roaches until the reinforcements come back. When you are going to make an attack or make a poke like that, try and have some sort of logical reason that you're doing it, some sort of plan that you're looking to do with your attack, or you end up with a situation like this with a fragmented force that kind of gets picked apart by these different components of your opponent's army. Now he is able to finally get some production out of these hatcheries, although even in the middle of an attack, he's got larvae just sitting around, not being used, despite the fact that he's got plenty of money to do it. That was almost a killing blow. If Demon had properly sieged his tanks during that attack, or coordinated a little better, that would have just been the kill rate there. So he gets a bit of a reprieve, despite the fact that he's vastly underproducing. Just to take a look here, since I keep panning back to it, you can see that drone production is just really bad. Overall, the theme of this is that production has been bad. Over here, we have what looks like a fair bit of saturation, certainly over optimal saturation, which would be 16. And then back here, certainly well under that. It didn't make sense to transfer as many drones as were transferred originally. You could get better production by splitting them a little more evenly between the bases to actually maximize the mining time that you're getting out of these things. It's economy where Zerg is going to win the game. It's their real main advantage, the fact that they can get extra base out that they can get those drones out and really get the economy going before anyone else. And so you have to take advantage of that. And if you're just wasting them like this, then that's not going to help you out. Again, in response, we see Rise just not militarizing enough either. So now that he does decide to make some drones, kind of overmakes them. He knows that there's a scary production out there. He knows that there's tanks, marines, marauders, and so forth out there, and then decides to defend himself with a very small army, not really adding much to that defense. It would be nice to see one taking another base, as well as actually getting out there and defending yourself. Finally, we do see some action at the Evo chamber, at least. This went down, about 10 minutes ago, and it's just now producing an upgrade, and he puts a second one down. If you're going to tech to these things, which I believe he got just to get the spore crawlers out to defend against something that wasn't happening, then at least use them. He could gain a lot of advantage. In this case, he went for the missile attacks. He'd probably be better off with armor, given how many Marines he had scouted and seen, but that's a bit of a detail. In either case, I'd still like to see him just using them. So again, we see this monster force come in. There's not a whole lot that Rise can do about it because he didn't really prepare anything for it. He was again relying on reacting and then making more of an army as he saw it, but didn't really react in time. Over drones, which is a constant Zerg issue, that you just make too many drones. Again, checking the creep spread, we see the same two tumors there. This would have been helpful if it was done. Probably wouldn't have saved them anyway. But we just see everything falling apart off an attack that should have been very predictable. He pushed out with the exact same composition that he pushed out with the first time, and yet it still took Rise by surprise. And that should just not be happening in any case. So to review the main 3 points in this game, the first has to be your larva control. You have to be producing with the larvae. You can't just let them sit there, just collecting dust and squirming around. They have to be turned into drones, into an army, into overlords, and they have to be doing it quickly, particularly in the very early game. In the first 5 minutes, there should never really be a larva sitting there for more than a couple seconds. It should always be used. You should never just forget about them and then make 2 drones at once. There's the overlords. You've got to stay on top of them and avoid a situation in which you're making 5 at a time. A lot of Zergs will just build up an army. They just select all their larvae. They hit to build 8 roaches. They make them, and then now they're capped supply. And then when that next larva inject pops out from the queen, they've got 8 more larvae, and they can't produce anything. So they just hit it and they build 5 overlords. You can't be doing that. And then overteching was a major theme in this. Choose a tech path. Make sure it's coherent. Don't tech to things that you don't plan on using. So that's basically it for this. My next videos will focus on a silver or gold game, whatever I find, and I'll continue doing all 3 leagues. Thanks for